Back in 2016, when Donald Trump ran against Hillary Clinton for the presidency, shortly thereafter I was out in Colton, California at the Seventh-day Sabbath Church, and I gave a sermon, and it was called the Trump Card. And somebody came up to me after the meeting or at the Q&A, and they said, if Hillary Clinton had gotten in, would your talk on the Trump card just have changed a few names? I said, yeah, it would have just changed a few names. The person said, would your conclusions, would you have come to a similar conclusion if Hillary Clinton had got in? I said, yes, I would have. They looked at me and they said, how can that be? And I said, because Revelation 17 doesn't change. It doesn't change. So this afternoon, we're going to look at the war in the Ukraine. The war in the Ukraine. 2 Peter chapter 1, what a wonderful promise. Wonderful promise. And it dovetails right into the great controversy and the spirit of prophecy. The Bible says we have also a more sure word of prophecy. So my question today would be, are we listening to national news? ABC affiliates? Are we listening to Good Morning America and George Stephanopoulos? Are we listening to CNN and Anderson Cooper? Because they're all talking about the war in the Ukraine, aren't they? Everybody's talking about it. And everybody, let's see, how does it go? Vladimir Putin is a terrible, horrible, conniving, greedy man who wants to take over the Ukraine. Is that kind of what we're hearing? And we are to oppose Russia with everything we've got. Is that what we hear? Yes. Okay. And then on the other side, let's see, Zelensky. Oh, he's a courageous, noble, wonderful leader of a wonderful group of people in the Ukraine. Is that what we hear? Yes. And who's telling us that? They are. All these guys right here, that's what they're telling us. Now, can we believe them? No. Can't believe them. The only sure word in our world today is right here. It's not found with these TV personalities. It's not found on Fox News. It's not found on our radio. It's not found in the newspaper or on the internet. It's not found there, folks. This is the only sure word that we have that's not a lie and a deception. Right. That's a lie and that's a deception. The Bible alone gives the sure word of prophecy. And Peter said, if you follow what the Word says, you do well that you take heed, as unto a light that shineth in a dark place, until the day dawn and the day star arise in your hearts. So if we listen to what the Bible says as the sure word of prophecy that shines as a light in a dark place, then we'll know what's really going on. Now, if we don't listen to it, if we think that these guys are akin to the fourth person of the Godhead, and that whatever they're telling us is absolutely the truth, well, then what's going to happen is we've rejected the light that's shining in a dark place, and because we've rejected the light of the word of prophecy, our darkness is going to be worse, isn't it? Because we've rejected the light. So here's the bad boy. Here's the bad guy. Take a look at him, and if you see him in a dark alley, Put him away. Isn't that what we're being told pretty much? Vladimir Putin's growing, listen to this, he's obsessed. Not a very positive word, is it, Don? Not very positive. He's obsessed with the Ukraine, and it's developed over many years. You know, the idea you get is Vladimir Putin sits in a room all by himself, and he just, oh, I can't wait to get to the Ukraine. I can't wait to gobble it up. That's the picture you get, isn't it? Somebody that's obsessed, night and day, they're sitting there eating their Cheerios. I'm going to get the Ukraine if it's the last thing I do. You know, that's the picture. And this is what we get drunk on in the West. That's what we get drunk on. In 2005, he referred to the recapture of Crimea as a ridiculous idea, an irresponsible step that would open a Pandora's box of historical grievances. But 9 years later, he would do exactly that. By summer of 2021, he was denying the existence of Ukrainians as a people separate from Russians. Early this week, he declared the Ukrainian state illegitimate. And this comes from Kadri Leak, Senior Policy Fellow. So, if he were to go into the Ukraine and then go south and take over the Crimea, that's irresponsible. That would be terrible. So again, here is this irresponsible, obsessed madman in Russia. And that's how he is pictured in the West, isn't it? You know, I remember a number of years ago when I was in Germany, the folks where I stayed who invited me, the man was full-blooded Russian. He and his family had moved to Germany, and I don't remember the details. But after the meetings were over, we were in the car driving back to their home, and the man, of course, in his language, and one of his children translated to me, he said, "You know what, Bill?" He said, "Even though you're an American, you're not that bad of a guy." Now, what does that tell you? That man had been brainwashed from the time he was a child to think all Americans are evil. They're evil people. Well, I told his daughter who was translating, I don't remember her name now either, but I said, you know, you tell your dad that even though he's a Russian, he's not a bad guy either. Folk, you and I, you think about, as I was growing up, it was the Cold War, it was the Bay of Pigs, it was the Cuban Missile Crisis, and John F. Kennedy was a god. And Nikita Khrushchev, what a horrible, horrible man he was, right? That's what we were told, right? All my life. Russians are Russian people, you know, they eat bars of iron for lunch. And, you know, that's the picture we've been given. They are crazy, evil, warlike people. That's what we've been told. And why have we believed it? Because we've rejected the sure word of prophecy. But thank God we can reverse that today and get a real picture of current events. And here's our hero. He's a hero in Ukraine. Volodymyr Zelensky, addressing the U.S. Congress on Wednesday via Zoom. He's expected to use the address to urge members of the House of Representatives and the Senate to intensify pressure on Joe Biden to allow the transfer of MiG-29 fighter jets from Poland. The House Speaker Nancy Pelosi You can almost hear the drum beat, can't you? You know, dun-dun-dun-dun, what's going to happen next? The Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said in a joint letter to members, the Congress, our country, and the world are in awe of the people of the Ukraine. Oh, the people of the Ukraine, they all have an S across the front of their clothing. They're all supermen, Eugene, that's right. They're all supermen and women in the Ukraine who have shown extraordinary courage, resilience, and determination in the face of Russia's unprovoked, vicious, and illegal war. Picture's kind of obvious, isn't it? Russia's horrible. The Ukraine, they're heroes, they're wonderful. And America is to do everything they can to help the Ukraine, even if it means our gas prices go to $15 a gallon. We are supposed to tighten the belt because we've got to support the heroes in the Ukraine against that horrible man in Russia. Now, folk, that's the picture we've all been told for the last 2 months. Now, it's terrible what's happening to the Ukrainian people. The bloodshed, the deaths, the relocation of hundreds of thousands of Ukrainians is an absolute crime. It's a crime against humanity. But Vladimir Putin is not the bad guy. Vladimir Putin and Zelensky of the Ukraine are simply puppets. That's all they are. They're little puppets, you know, and there's little strings attached to each one of their cheeks. And there's a guy standing behind the curtain, and he's saying, okay, Vladimir, this is what you're going to do, and this is what you're going to say. And he pulls his strings, and out of Putin's mouth comes all those awful things that he is being accused of doing. And there's somebody behind a curtain in the Ukraine, and he's controlling Zelensky as well. Same guy controlling both of them. Same guy. And Zelensky is doing exactly as he is being told to do. Is Putin really the bad guy? And Zelensky the good guy? Of course, we feel very bad for the displaced peoples of the Ukraine. Feel deep pain for those who have lost loved ones. But what is really going on in the Ukraine? Why is this conflict taking place? And what are the real reasons behind this conflict? Well, let's go behind the curtain. How about that? Let's pull back that curtain that's hiding the puppeteer who's controlling the puppets. Revelation 17, verse 1, verse 2, and verse 18. This is what the sure word of prophecy says. This is the light. This is the light that zeroes in on what is really happening over in the Ukraine today. There came one of the 7 angels which had the 7 vials and talked with me, saying unto me, come hither. I will show unto thee the judgment of the great whore that sitteth upon many waters, with whom the kings of the earth have committed fornication, and the inhabitants of the earth have been made drunk with the wine of her fornication. Now, Revelation 17, 1 and 2 describes 2 entities here. The great whore and the kings of the earth who are committing fornication together. Now, who's the great whore? The papacy. Romanism, however you want to call it. Roman Catholic system, the Pope, the papacy, the Romish church. That's who that is. Now, in spite of the fact that many Seventh-day Adventists, as Brent and Gina were describing to me out after the morning meeting, Mark Finley's going right along describing who the Antichrist is, and he comes to the point, and then he goes. And he forgets who it is. Well, folk, we can't forget. We can't forget, because one of the messages we've been given as a people is to point out who that power is. And if we can't declare who that power is, well, ultimately we're going to unite with her. It's Rome, the papacy. All the reformers taught it. Ellen White taught it. Now, who are the kings of the earth? Who are they? What's another word for a king of the earth? Presidents, leaders, dictators, monarch, politicians. What does the Bible say? It says that the papacy is in connection with unlawful unity with the leaders of the earth. Is Vladimir Putin a leader of the earth? Yes or no? Yes. Who is pulling his strings? The Bible says that the great whore is. Is Zelensky a king of the earth? Who's pulling his strings? Rome is pulling Zelensky's strings. Now, verse 2 would seem to indicate that the kings and the whore are equals. But notice verse 18. The woman which thou sawest is that great city. That's just further evidence who the woman is, because locked into that whore's name is the name of a great city in the world. Can you think of any other church in the world that has a great city's name connected to their name? Let's see. Well, let's see. There's the Budapest Baptist Church. No. There's one. Rome. Rome. The woman which thou sawest is that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth. Who's in charge? Rome is. Rome reigns over. Rome guides the horse. Rome tells the puppets where to go. Did you notice? I had a guy in Ghana who sent me an email, and he said, there's something strange, because for the last 2 years or so, it was virus, 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 and that's all we heard about. And then, just out of the blue, we stopped hearing. The virus went way in the background, and right on the heels of it withdrawing into the shadows, it was Ukraine, 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 Ukraine. Did you notice that? Yeah, it's almost like a commercial break, Eugene. Is there a connection? Is there a connection? Is there a purpose in the virus that served its purpose for a time, and now this war in the Ukraine is being used for the same reason? Is it possible? Think about now, one of the goals of the COVID virus, one of the goals was to destroy the world economy by having shutdowns, people staying home, people not having jobs. Well, they didn't get that. In fact, in 2020, I had a guy Never heard of him in my life. He wrote me an email and he said, wow, you are really a watchman on the wall, Pastor Hughes. Now, folk, I don't hear that very often. Usually what I hear people say is, I really don't like you. That's what so when I heard this guy say that, I'm thinking to myself, all right, what's the punchline? There's got to be something else coming. And he keeps on going. And I'm going, wow, is he talking about me? All the time I'm sitting there thinking, where's he going with this? Where's he going? So he gets done, and I said, now, sir, I really didn't get the thrust of your email. What were you trying to suggest to me in your email? He said this, and this was the kicker. He said, since you are a watchman on the wall, and da-da-da-da-da-da-da, he reiterates all this stuff. He says, then you ought to warn America that Klaus Schwab, a world economist in connection with Pope Francis, wants to bring about the great reset of the world economy. And he wants to do that in the summer of 2020. I said, I emailed the guy back and I said, well, who in the world is Klaus Schwab? And how do I know that Klaus Schwab's timetable is God's timetable? And I said, and what if in the summer of 2020, Klaus Schwab's plan to destroy the world economy and create a new economy, what happens if it doesn't happen in the summer of 2020? And I said it was going to. I said, you know what that makes me? That makes me a false teacher. And I'm not a false teacher. And I'm not all that other stuff you were saying about me either. Folk, that's what Rome wanted through the virus. The destruction of the economy. So that kind of fades away a little bit. And now it's Ukraine. What's going on with the war in the Ukraine? What's going on? All this stuff's going on, and we're supposed to get out our Kleenex and be really sad and throw all kinds of money to the Ukraine, while we're paying $5, $6 for a tank of gas. And folks, that's not just affecting your pocketbooks. How about the businesses? How about the grocery stores? Prices are going up and up and up, aren't they? And what happens, folks, if the gas prices go from $5 to double? What happens to the prices in the stores and everywhere we shop? What happens? Well, our dollar begins to go less and less and less. Folk, the war in the Ukraine, one of the purposes is to destroy the world economy. I was talking with a lady just this last week where I get my mass mailings done. She and her family are from England. I don't hold it against them. They have this strange way of speaking. I don't hold it against them, They think I speak strangely. She told me, she said, before the war in the Ukraine, gas to heat their home, I think she said it was $300 or 300 pounds a month. Now that right there is already very high. She told me this week, she said, now the people of England are paying 900 pounds a month. to heat their home. Well, how long do people do that before people go out into the streets and start killing each other? This war is an attempt to destroy the world economy, just as COVID was. Now, folk, you and I both know from the great controversy in Revelation chapter 13 that the world economy would play a huge part in end-time events, wouldn't it? Because the Bible says in Revelation 13, He causeth all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark in their right hand or in their foreheads, and that no man might buy or sell, save he that had the mark of the name of the beast or the number of his name. So, folk, the economic status of the world, it must be created in such a way that it can be used to bring about religious oppression and a Sunday law. That's what Revelation 13 says. So COVID, the war in the Ukraine, both of those folk are to work on and to bring about, as God wills it, as God wills it, but to bring about a climate where the world economy can be used at Rome's disposal to force worship. That's what Revelation 13 says. Great Controversy, page 382, Ellen White is crystal clear, talking about Babylon the Great, that great city which reigneth over the kings of the earth, the power that for so many centuries maintained despotic sway over the monarchs of Christendom is Rome. How much plainer? It's so obvious. She knew. Babylon the Great, the papacy. Great Controversy, page 382. Luther accused the Roman Church and the papacy of keeping the church in captivity, equating Rome with the biblical Babylon that exiled the Israelites from their homeland, holding them captive in Babylon. According to Luther, the Pope was holding the church in captivity through the use of the sacramental system and Rome's theology. All the reformers. Well. I didn't hear Fox News or CNN or any of the rest of them talk about these pictures, did you? Now this is what the Bible just told us. You've got the man all in white, don't we? And the man, Vladimir Putin, over here, the black suit. Now there's huge symbolism in that, folks. Whenever you see the Pope with another leader, he's always in white. And the other leader, always in a dark suit. There's a reason for that. A reason for that. Well. Here's Mr. Zelensky, our hero. And look who he's playing games with. He's playing games with Pope Francis. Just what Revelation 17 said. I guess this talk this afternoon, I mean, this is probably just old hat for you guys because, you know, the church, I mean, I know the folk here are getting fed, but other churches where some of you folks go, I'm sure you're hearing people talk about this all the time, you know. I'm sure you are, right? So this is just old hat. In black magic witchcraft, the color white is considered the preeminent color. Since the color white is comprised of all colors, black is a lack of color, white is considered most powerful. Black must give way to white. Further, white is considered to be inherently based in the spiritual. The more highly ranked illuminist will wear white, while the more lowly ranked person will wear black. If an illuminist meets the Pope, he will almost always wear black to signify the inferiority or subordination of his rank. That's what Revelation 17 says, doesn't it? The kings of the earth are subordinates. They are inferior to the Pope. If you see someone meeting the Pope wearing a different color, you may safely assume he is not Illuminist. Now, folk, I don't like when people mention Illuminist, because it's clear in history that Adam Weishaupt in the 1770s, when he established the Illuminati, that he was a soldier for the Jesuit order. And all the Illuminati is a front organization for the Jesuits. That's all they are. But the point being here, the leader in white, he's supreme authority. The man in black is inferior. He is a subordinate to the man in white. That is exactly the picture that Revelation 17 gives us. Before we go on, let's restate one critically important specter of this white-black symbolism regarding the Pope's visitors. When the Pope wears the white dress, he is hearkening back to that. Who wears the white because he is God, the Lucifer sun god. The Pope is declaring to all the world that he is God and is superior to all other men. When Presidents Bush, Clinton, Reagan, along with Queen Elizabeth II and former Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, all wore black as they met with the Pope, they were all acknowledging the Pope's superior position as a religious holy man. They were also acknowledging that the Pope is their God. That's what they were doing. And to Vladimir Putin and Mr. Zelensky, this is their God right here. This is their God. And they do what he says to do. Even to create a war. But you say, wait a minute. Zelensky is the leader of the Ukraine. They are his people. But there is a relationship that supersedes all other relationships. Zelensky is subservient to the Pope. Whatever he says, because he is God, even if he tells Zelensky, thousands and thousands of your people will be slaughtered, Zelensky says, whatever you want, you are my God. And so they're killed. They're killed. Listen to the priest. If the government of the United States were at war with the church, we would say tomorrow, to hell with the government of the United States. The church and all the governments of the world were at war, we would say to them too. Why is it the Pope has such tremendous power? The Pope is the ruler of the world. The emperors, the Zelenskys, the Putins, the Bidens of the world are as these altar boys of mine. They're altar boys. And when an altar boy is with a priest, and a priest tells the altar boy to jump, what does the altar boy say? How high? And when Francis tells Biden Pelosi, Schumer, Putin, Zelensky, Netanyahu, Merkel, and all the rest of them jump, what do they say? How high? And if Pope Francis says, slaughter your people, destroy your economies, they say, I'm at your command. The vicar of peace. That's what we're told. I mean, around Easter, you heard what happened, didn't you? The Pope and the leaders, the religious leaders of the Ukraine, they invoked the Virgin Mary to save Russia and the Ukraine. Did you hear about that? I mean, the Pope is the man of peace, right? He's the good guy. He's a good guy. If you believe that, I've got a bridge in Brooklyn. I'll sell you after sundown today, okay? Folk, every war through the Dark Ages, it originated with Babylon the Great. Every war. The Civil War, World War II, Vietnam, the wars in the Middle East. They all originated in Rome. You say, prove that. I'm glad you said that. Revelation 18, 23 and 24. The light of a candle shall shine no more at all in thee. The voice of the bridegroom and of the bride shall be heard no more at all in thee. For thy merchants were the great men of the earth, for by thy sorceries were all nations deceived. Interesting, that word sorceries. The Greek word is pharmakia, from which we get pharmacy, which would indicate to us that down towards the end of time, the papacy would fool around with medicine, drugs, vaccines, and all kinds of stuff to destroy the people of the world. The Bible goes on, and in her was found the blood of prophets, saints, and of all that were slain upon the earth. Now, prophets, that's kind of clear. Those are people that speak for God. Saints, those who walk with God. But what about this? All that were slain upon the earth? So you mean when people die by the hundreds of thousands in war, it's Babylon's fault? That's what the Bible says. So Pope Francis is a cold-blooded, calculated killer who is killing the people of the Ukraine and using the weaponry of his slave, Vladimir Putin from Russia, to do that. With the desire to destroy the world's economy and to bring about a Sunday law. That's what the war in the Ukraine is all about. Edmund Paris' classic, The Vatican Against Europe, he said this: the Pope approves of Austria's harsh treatment of Serbia, has no great opinion of the armies of Russia and France in the event of a war with Germany. The Cardinal Secretary of State does not see when Austria could make war if she does not decide to do so now. There in true colors is the Vicar of Christ, the Apostle of Peace, the Holy Pontiff, whom pious authors represent as having died of sorrow at seeing the outbreak of war. And Pope Francis is praying, "Oh Mary, please intercede. Please stop the killing in the Ukraine." And while he's praying, he prays with one hand, because the other hand behind his back, got a dagger. And that dagger is staring right at the heart of the Ukrainian people. There he is. The groom, espousing, showing his love, has a nice bouquet of flowers for his to-be. And he's got the dagger behind his back. You say, that's the most disgusting, sinister, and revolting picture. Yeah, it is. And that best illustrates what Rome is doing in relationship to the Ukraine right now. Rome is holding out a bouquet of flowers while she has a dagger behind her back. Pope Francis said this recently, "I have great pain in my heart because of the worsening of the situation in Ukraine." Adding that he was anguished and worried like many around the world because peace was threatened by partisan interests. He condemned actions destabilizing coexistence among nations and discrediting international law. Where COVID-19 failed? COVID-19, there was an attack on liberty, civil, religious, the right to work, attend school. But as we mentioned a little while ago, the one thing Rome wanted to set in place was the Great Reset, whereby all peoples would be equal, alike enslaved to the papacy. Klaus Schwab. You know, it's interesting, folks. See, if we listen to this long enough, we begin to think, oh, he's not what the Bible says. He's a loving father. You know, Uncle Arthur of the Bible and bedtime storybooks that I raised my children on, Uncle Arthur went to Vatican II, 1962 to 1965. John the 23rd died shortly after it began, and Pope Paul VI took over as Pope. Pope Paul VI was a heroin-spreading, he was horrible. I'll just say it that way. He was a cold-blooded killer. Uncle Arthur went to Vatican II. When he got back, he gave a sermon in Glendale, California, in which he said, I was within 30 feet of His holiness. We have been far too severe on our Roman Christian brothers and sisters. Bible prophecy doesn't lie, folks. While Uncle Arthur describes Pope Paul VI as though he was a holy man, Pope Paul VI was spreading drugs all over the world. All over the world, folks. Killing people by the hundreds, by the millions. And Uncle Arthur is so blind that he would say, I was within 30 feet of His holiness. Folk, when a Sunday law comes in our world, it will come at a time of crisis. And when it is brought forward, Pope Francis and other religious leaders are going to appear as though we're saving the world. This is the last-ditch effort. Because if we don't embrace this, the whole civilization could be destroyed. We have to do this. And I am here to save you. Folks, if we don't get the idea clear in our minds that this man and this system is straight from hell and want the destruction of humanity, we might think they're telling the truth. Because the deception will be overwhelming. Overwhelming. From William Engdahl's New Eastern Outlook, December 24 of 2021, he said, amid the 2020 global COVID lockdowns and economic dislocations it caused, Klaus Schwab, a previously low-profile founder of a Swiss-based business forum, emerged on the world stage calling for what he called a great reset of the entire world economy, using the pandemic as the driver. He even published a book in July of 2020 outlining his blueprint. It's been called a technocratic society with global top-down central planning. Schwab's global warming fears, the plight of the world's poor to justify what is in effect a plan for global totalitarianism where, as the Davos website puts it, nobody will own anything. Sound good? You can't have your car because that's owned by the totalitarian society. You can't drive anymore. You can't own a house anymore. You will get a certain amount of money deposited electronically in your bank every month, just like every other family throughout the world. That really gives you an incentive to go out and work, doesn't it? That's slavery, folks. That's slavery. That's what Schwab and Francis want. That's what they want for the world. What is not well known is the fact that the inspiration for Schwab's dystopian plans, surprise, surprise, comes from a Catholic bishop whom he met in Brazil in the 1970s. That bishop linked Schwab's vast globalist network with the powerful political influence of the present Pope Francis. Sounds like you're reading a page right out of the Great Controversy, doesn't it? Connecting the merchants of the earth, the papacy, all there together, working towards a Revelation 13 scenario. The lockdowns were intended to crush the economy, set it in the direction of nationalizing all industry and wiping out all small business. In October of 2020, the Pope issued an encyclical letter called Fratelli Tutti, in which he went after private property. He wrote, business abilities, which are a gift from God, should always be clearly directed to the development of others, to the elimination of poverty. So the way to eliminate poverty, now this is his reasoning. The way you eliminate poverty is to make everybody poor. That's how you eliminate it. It's strange the ideas that people can come up with when all they care about is power. Absolute power. The right to private property is always accompanied by the primary and prior principle of the subordination of all private property to the universal destination of the earth's goods, and thus the right of all to their use. What better way to attack the world economies than at the pump? Gas rises, so does everything else. What better way than this to control everyone? The war in the Ukraine is making it happen, and Rome is behind it. The Bible tells us in Revelation 18 that the merchants of the earth are made rich by their connection to the Vatican, and one of the things they control is the flow of oil. Or the fact that America has vast oil fields in North Dakota, Brent, that could gas up every car and every home and probably in the entire Western Hemisphere for probably pennies on the dollar for the next umpteen years. But instead, we're going to pay those prices at the pump. There's something wrong with that picture. Somebody has an agenda. And the Bible tells us who it is. Here is Rome's plan to bring about a time when no man will buy or sell. That is Rome's plan. And this is the Lord's plan. After these things, I saw another angel come down from heaven, having great power, and the earth was lightened with his glory. The book Great Controversy, Spalding and McGann, first page 2, says that the latter rain, which is what this verse is talking about, the latter rain is coming with 10 times the power of the midnight cry. And Great Controversy, page 400, tells us that the midnight cry went like a tidal wave over the land. So the latter rain, friends, is going to come with 10 times the power of a tidal wave. Now I wonder how long that man is going to stand in front of that. And when I see the pictures of the tsunami that hit in Indonesia back around the year 2000, and you see that great, massive wall of water coming with such force, and nothing stood in its way. I'm thankful today, friends. Yeah, Francis has his plans. He's got his plans. But God has his plans too. And God is bigger. And God's going to pour out power. And I'm so thankful for that.